might be time to worry about the Green Bay Packers because this is getting a little concerning.
I mentioned before the season, I was like, okay, I figure we're going to go through a rough patch at the beginning of the year and start figuring things out. But I'm worried we're not going to figure things out at this point. Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by Mr. John Harris, as always, of course. And yeah, just two dudes here talking about week 6, almost at 5, week 6. Those results, it was an interesting week. Definitely, it was tough because it was college football Saturday, and a lot of, I don't even follow college football, but there were some crazy games there. And obviously with the NFL, still some good games. Unfortunately, I'm kind of back to my curse. I don't know about you, John. You watched the Red Zone, so you're fine. But I tend to watch at least one game. We'll get into it later. But of course,
I have multiple screens, so I do Red Zone and then whatever game I care about most. And then if it's like a really big game, so what I do is I have Red Zone on, like with the sound on, and the other game sound off. But like this week, Chiefs Bills, I throw that on the bigger TV, put the sound on, Red Zone on the side screen. I usually pick whatever game is like the most fantasy relevant player to me, and that means unfortunately I watched the Falcons this week and for Kyle Pitts, and it was a very boring game. Anyway,
we'll talk about that in a second, actually. But yeah, I usually do 2, but lately I've been like, I'll wake up. Once again, if people don't know me, I am not a morning person, so I wake up like at 11:50 right on the dot just to make sure, fantasy stuff, and then I sit in my bed for like at least the first half of most games, so like about 1:30, watching on one screen. But then I go to my office here, if you want to call it an office. It's just a room, and I do something similar, but I don't do Red Zone. I just do 2 games. Like, okay, this is the main game I want to watch the sound, and then maybe like a fantasy implication game on the side. But anyways, that's a little preview into our Sunday setups. But before we head to talk about the Sunday games, we got to talk about the game that unfortunately occurred Thursday between the Washington football team and the Chicago Bears. Simply put, another Thursday game to forget. But this one was kind of expected. It didn't have the star power as the other disappointment of the Thursday night game from the previous week. But anyways, the Commanders, they take care of business. They win 12-7. The score kind of just says everything in regards to the excitement levels of this game. So, John, not the cleanest game. It just another Thursday, basically. But how did you feel about this one?
Well, I just want to say before we jump into this game specifically, Amazon has gotten the raw end of this deal because Thursday Night Football has been tough to watch. Obviously, we just saw this game. We've seen some of the previous ones. They started off really hot. Bills, Rams, Chiefs, Chargers. Like, they started off great. But then, we get the last couple weeks, Colts, Broncos. Bengals, Dolphins was good, but like the Tua injury kind of just overshadowed the whole game. That's not really the league's fault, but like Browns, Steelers wasn't that entertaining outside of like a couple drives. And then this upcoming week, like Saints, Cardinals. Hopefully that's a better game than what we've seen so far, but not like 2 inspiring teams. Ravens, Buccaneers seems like it should be pretty entertaining. But then we get like Eagles, Texans, Falcons, Panthers, Titans and Packers, which might be somewhat decent maybe. But Bills, Lions. Oh, that's Thanksgiving. But I don't know, like just Thursday Night Football for like the rest of the year. There's not a lot of great games here. I don't know. I feel like the NFL needs to flex and make prime time a little better than what they've done this year. I know the COVID year, there was a lot of like flexing and moving games around. And I feel like they should totally make that a normal thing as the year goes on because they set all these games before the season starts. And so you're like, well, maybe this team will be good. And then you get like the Broncos with 7 primetime games this year, and they're not. So I don't know.
Yeah, they're a bunch of
That's
stinkers.
a whole other conversation. Anyway.
Real quick to add on that, though. Just I want to say one quick piece. Like, I don't understand why that. I kind of do because there's high school football theoretically on Fridays. But, you're the NFL. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I understand you don't want to mess with Saturdays. That's college football's day, and that's, messing with ratings. But, like, I feel like Friday's open game. It's an extra day of rest. And I don't know. I feel like, too, we would get probably better quality football just with an extra day of rest for those guys too. But nonetheless, it's here to stay. And really all the primetime games. Most of the markets, most of the like night games have not been great. There's only, like you mentioned, only been a handful. So even like Sunday nights, there's been a couple of stinkers or blowouts, and same with obviously, we'll talk about the Monday night game later, but yeah. So anyways, any thoughts on Chicago and the Washington football team?
Yeah, this game, not great. Justin Fields, he had an all right game. I think it's encouraging they're letting him throw the ball more. He attempted 27 passes, so that's nice to see. And I think that one touchdown that he did throw to, I can't remember who it was. Was it Velus Jones? Dante Pettis making a reappearance from
journeyman
years ago when he was somewhat relevant. I thought that was like the play of the game. That was the most entertaining play, was that touchdown. And the rest of the game, I was pretty bored. Like even the Washington touchdown that they got, it was off a turnover. And so there was short field position, and then Brian Robinson just kind of punched it in. So this game was really boring. I didn't enjoy watching it. I don't think that either of these teams are very good. And all of a sudden now Carson Wentz is going to be out for like 4 to 6 weeks. And yeah, there's just a whole lot going on here. I will say for the Bears, at least, and Justin Fields, I know a lot of people are, and it's like okay to do this because it is year 2, and a lot of QBs sort of like you can kind of figure out how good they are based on their first 2 years in the league. But this is one of those situations, and I've said this before, but it feels so hard to know, like, is Justin Fields bad, or is there literally just no talent on this team? Because you look at this receiver room that he's throwing to, and like this is honestly a joke. Like Dante Pettis being your leading receiver, and this is no shot at Dante Pettis, but like there's no other NFL team that he's a starter on. And you got like Velus Jones and all these like different guys. Like Darnell Mooney is your best receiver. He's a talented player, but like this offense is just kind of a joke. Like even Washington, as bad as they've been so far, like McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, like all of those guys are very talented receivers. And you got teams like Chicago out here who are rolling out with like basically bench warmers as their starters.
Yeah, Chicago's offense is pretty disappointing. But I think, if I remember correctly, I think we both kind of already alluded to that. It's just unfortunate that this is like the first game we saw Justin, like you mentioned, Justin Fields really get to throw the ball a lot. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not sure if I used this analogy before. I remember reading, I think it was Booker's, just to bring it to the NBA, but Devin Booker's rookie year, it was like towards the end of the year, the Suns, it was when the Suns sucked. And, I forget their head coach at the time. I want to say it was Earl Monroe. Could be wrong. Probably am wrong. But he just let Booker play a lot. He gave him a lot of minutes, and he said, we're not winning the championship this year. And I forget the quote exactly. Basically, he told Booker, like, hey, go make mistakes, go learn. Like, you're going to make mistakes, but this is your best chance to see what you really can do. And I think the Bears need to kind of adopt that mindset with Justin Fields. Like, okay, yes, you're a pretty good running team, and yes, Justin Fields is obviously dual threat of quarterback, but that's not really the question marks that we all have, and that's not really, what's going to win you games for the most part, especially with Justin Fields. Is you got to see what you have in the pass game, especially with him. I know, like John already mentioned, you don't have really the weapons to do so, but we see it. I mean, we're seeing the Giants out here. Just to preface, we're seeing the Giants out here with like probably less talented receivers, making it work and making things happen. So, yeah, the offensive minds there, and I know their OCs are the Green Bay's quarterbacks coach last year. I'm not sure what his play calling experience is, so maybe it's something he's growing with too. But I feel like we've said this every week for Chicago, but it just feels like Justin Fields has gotten the short end of the stick here in regards to help. We'll talk about some of his counterparts later, how it's been a little bit different for them. And then, Washington, not much to add. I mean, great to see Brian Robinson get a touchdown and, have a solid game, just less than 2 months removed from what happened to him. So it's good to see that he's already producing there. But, I mean, grand scheme of things, even though Washington won, and like both these teams are 2-4, like we don't expect these teams to be in the playoff race. These will probably be in the top 10 race for for a top 10 pick, not top 10 of the league. And like you mentioned, no Wentz too going forward. That really hurts. And it goes back to Taylor Heineke, who we all got entranced by that story, but I think we saw last year, Heineke, there's a reason he's a backup. So Yeah, not much to take from this game, and not much I'm going to add because not much is needed. So, but good win for the Washington football team, making the NFC East look a little bit better, not by at least getting 2 wins and upping that win total there. So moving on from that boring Thursday nighter, we head to one of the shockers of the week, and that is the aforementioned Atlanta game. Falcons win 28-14 here at home. Kyle Pitts scores his first touchdown in the United States of America, although he didn't do much else after that. I mean, I didn't even, just preface, I started Irv Smith in the league that I have Kyle Pitts, and it was basically the same thing, so didn't matter. But yeah, San Francisco, a little bit of a shocker here. I know they're missing a bunch of pieces on defense. No Nick Bosa, no Eric Armstead. Obviously, they lost Emmanuel Mosley, their corner. I think they lost their tackle to McGlinchey at some point in this game. So seems like typical 49ers where they've been hit by injuries. Don't want to discredit the Falcons here, but yeah, John, what are your thoughts on the Falcons upset on the San Francisco 49ers?
Good win for the Falcons. I mean, they played to win. They were running the ball the whole game. They won the turnover battle here. Like, I think that's a crucial piece of this game. Yeah, the 49ers are dealing with injuries, but Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 picks, and the Falcons, they just played it safe, and they didn't turn the ball over. So they capitalized on their opportunities. So I guess shout out to Arthur Smith talking about playing winning football. But also they just came out strong. Like, I think they took advantage of the fact that the Niners were missing some pieces early on, and like, you just don't fully know how strong the defense is going to be, because we know that, like, fully healthy, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL. But when you got different pieces, it's just things might start off a little rough. And so they came out swinging 14-0 to start the game. So yeah, I don't know. I watched this game on the side screen, but at the same time, there just wasn't a whole lot going on, because it felt like the Niners were playing a negative game script the entire time, so they couldn't really get anything established on the ground. Jeff Wilson, I think, fumbled as well. So like, they just didn't have much success on the run game. So that forced them to pass the whole time. And that's why Ayuk and George Kittle and those guys had a good game. But on the opposite side of the ball, the Falcons were just bleeding clock. So it's, and they were, having successful drives. So it's like, what do you really want the 49ers to do? Like you said, a lot of players went down. A lot of guys were already out. So hopefully for the Niners, they can stay healthy, because they still look like they could be a pretty good team. They're just kind of an unfortunate bump in the road right now.
Yeah, I think it's a typical NFL bump in the road. All these teams are talented. I will say, though, Jimmy Garoppolo, like you already mentioned, didn't have the best game. I think it was one of the next-gen stats of the day. Jimmy Garoppolo was 4 of 11 for 72 yards on and threw 2 of his picks, both of his picks on throws 10-plus yards in the air. And I was trying to look for the spray chart, because if I remember correctly, I think it was over the middle, which is very commonly where Jimmy Garoppolo does throw the ball. So it seems like, it shouldn't be too much shock, but it seems like Atlanta, they knew what they want. They kind of knew where to defend and, slow down the Kyle Shanahan run game. And like you mentioned, the turnovers were killer, because then, once they are San Francisco's behind down 14-0, kind of have to start throwing the ball. You really can't lean on the rock or, lean on running the ball the whole time. So yeah, credit to the Falcons and their defensive staff. Like you mentioned, Arthur Smith playing for the win. Yeah, it was a good win for them, I guess. I mean, it was, but yeah, I mean, the offense, Atlanta offense, there's not much to take away. I mean, Mariota, I'll give him credit, efficient with the ball. I think he was 13 for 14, but only for 100-something yards. And yeah, just didn't turn the ball over, like you mentioned. Made some plays with his legs, with the running game. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that Atlanta, and I know they're both 3-3 after this game, but once again, not to. We are gonna get some mad Atlanta fans, but I'm just not too impressed with this win. 49ers missing Bosa and Armstead, those are huge, especially they probably slow down that run game, or maybe force some mistakes for Mariota. So I don't have much else to add here.
Real quick, I do have a question for you. So I saw this on Twitter earlier, and it is sort of fantasy football related, but also just kind of in general. And I think it really is pertinent to the fact that you just brought up the whole Devin Booker analogy with the Suns that year, and the coach saying we're not going to win the championship, so we're going to develop our young guys. So in this game, right, the Falcons, they go out, they win the game 28-14, good win. But if you look at this game, like Kyle Pitts, 3 catches for 19 yards, Drake London, 3 catches for 40 yards. Like their last 2 players they drafted in the first round, both being top 10 picks, are almost like having no impact and no usage throughout the season so far. And we know that they're both very talented. And so I'm wondering, like, okay, because assuming that Atlanta doesn't all of a sudden become some force, because I don't think anyone's expecting them to like go in deep and win multiple playoff games or anything. Like hypothetically, they could maybe make the playoffs based on the fact their division has been kind of weak. But even then, I feel like they probably won't. So let's say, like, hypothetically, would you rather be the Falcons right now and run the crap out of the ball and win like 9 games? Or would you rather actually throw out your young pieces like Kyle Pitts and Drake London and maybe even Desmond Ridder and sacrifice some of those wins and win like 5 games, but for the sake of developing the players that you've drafted early? What do you think?
See, so what Aaron the GM would do would be the latter, just develop the young pieces, because presently constructed, like, yes, you already alluded to, yes, this Atlanta team can make the playoffs. Like, yes, they could, but I just don't see them winning the Super Bowl. Like, they just don't have the difference makers to do that. So it's kind of like you already, like what the quandary of most of these teams face is, like, do we want to just kind of be middling, or, you know, maybe suck for a year or two and, you know, get better picks and then make the move. But obviously Arthur Smith, I think it's important to remember, came from Tennessee. It's very much like Tennessee. They're leaning on the run game. And then the pass game is basically, okay, like they're slow in the box, or, you know, just a few game plan, but it's a run heavy offense and you know, a very smart defense. It's very similar to Tennessee. I mean, I'm guessing that's what he's going for here. It's kind of similar kind of culture and style, and, you know, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I would personally throw out the youngsters, let them make mistakes, see what you got, and, you know, let them maybe grow and develop more. Because, yeah, obviously, I think we all feel Mariota's not the future. Sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
What about you?
I'm sitting here, like, because like I said, I watched this game on the side screen, and I'm almost just like, okay, I get it. Like, yes, I think I would always want to play for the win. Like, I'm not saying they should try to lose and tank. And if Mariota gives you the best chance to win and Desmond Ridder's not ready, that's fine. But with guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, who are both drafted so highly, like, a top 10 pick should be playing and should be being used. I don't care how good of a team you are. Like, well, if you're a top 10 pick, most likely, unless you traded for it, you're a really bad team. Like, this player should be a featured part of your game plan. And so it's just kind of shocking to me that it's like, okay, we're going to run the ball 31 times with Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier, our backup running backs, because our starter's injured. We're going to run the ball 31 times with them and just barely use our top 5 picks. Like, what is the point of even picking them at that point? Like, I feel like if this was going to be the result of after you selected them, like, go take a tackle or go take Justin Fields, who could do exactly what Mariota is doing in this offense right now, which is attempt 14 passes, and maybe he wouldn't be as efficient or something because he's a rookie. He's going to make a couple more mistakes and want to just, like, bomb it deep every now and then. But, like, I don't know. Like, the way that they're playing right now makes absolutely no sense to me. Of, like, it feels like the front office and the coaching staff, like you said, have 2 very different visions of, like, what this team's going to be. And right now, the coaching staff is playing for the here and now, while the here and now is not catering to the 2 talented playmakers you have. And also, for the record, I think a lot of people, for some reason, think that winning is exclusive of Drake London and Kyle Pitts being used. I don't understand. Like, I feel like if you're a head coach and you can't find a way to win while using those 2 players, like, you're a bad coach. And I'm not saying Arthur Smith's a bad coach, but I'm just saying, like you mentioned, we're watching Daniel Jones and the Giants win 5 games. And I really personally don't believe there's that big of a gap between Daniel Jones and Marcus Mariota. And the Falcons have better weapons than Kyle Pitts and Drake London. They're better than any of the receiving weapons the Giants have. But we're watching Brian Daboll figure out how to feature Saquon Barkley and how to get everybody else involved and make it work. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. And also, I am a Kyle Pitts fantasy owner that's very mad. But in real life, it just doesn't make sense to me.
We're both Kyle Pitts fantasy owners, caveat. But I've already, if you've been following the podcast, I've already jumped off this train. Like I said, I had to start Irv Smith only because Pat Fryermuth, my other tight end. I had very rare time I had 3 tight ends on my roster. But yeah, because Fryermuth was out. And I'm like, well, I'm not dropping Fryermuth to Pitts. So, but yeah, we'll see what Atlanta decides to do with their young talent going forward. And, but I mean, if they keep racking up the wins, it's hard for us to sit here and criticize, I guess. But we'll see who has the last laugh at any year when Atlanta's probably going to be in Cabo with the rest of us.
Yeah, I hope all Falcons fans after the year can sit there and take pride in like the 9 wins that they came out with. Congrats, I guess, if they get 9 wins.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So anyhow, now we move to a little more inclement weather. Speaking of Cabo, going to Cleveland, where the Browns, they got, for lack of a better phrase, beaten down by the New England Patriots and Bailey Zappi. We got another quarterback controversy, apparently, according to some, John. Maybe Zappi over Mac Jones. Nonetheless, Patriots, they win 38-15 here. What are your thoughts on, Bailey Zappi, another hero backup or third string, actually? Is it time to hand him the keys?
Well, first off, I got to give credit to the guys calling plays for the Patriots because they've actually been really good the last couple of weeks. And this is something I was very critical of coming into the season. It was Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, the offensive play calling staff for the Patriots. I thought they were going to be very rough, and they've actually been pretty good. So I got to give credit to them over the last couple of weeks. Not the craziest of opponents, Detroit and Cleveland, but like they're putting up a lot of points. So that's kind of what matters there. For the Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones thing, no, I don't think there's a QB controversy. Like if it's just like people just gotta forget about Tom Brady. Like with the Patriots, you hear this late round draft pick, white quarterback from whatever. He's like, and all of a sudden everybody starts thinking like this is gonna be the exact same thing that happened with Tom Brady. Stop. Like just no. Really, what I think is happening with Bailey Zappi here is, number one, they're not playing that great of defenses. Like I said, the Lions, the Browns, these aren't the greatest of defenses. Number two, they're using the crap out of Ramondre Stevenson, and he's a very talented running back, so that's great. Number three, their defense is playing well, so they're not having to like force the issue with anything. And number four, this kind of relates to the fact that Bill Belichick, he made this like weird comment where he didn't like guarantee that Mac Jones was the starter moving forward. But I don't think he was doing that to create a quarterback controversy. I think if we go back and watch the first couple games, I saw somebody make this point and I went back and watched some of the highlights, and I would kind of agree with this. There was some moments that Mac Jones like wasn't playing the Patriot way. Like the check down is there and he'd be like, I kind of want to try and just make this pass like 10 yards down the field. Like just stuff that like the Patriots are not really known for, of trying to make like a tighter throw than the defense will give you. And I think that Bill Belichick was using this Bailey Zappi thing as a wake-up call to say, hey, Mac, look what this guy can do when he just plays on schedule, in the system, just rolls with it. And he's having success. And so I think like they're just using this to say, Mac, like use this as motivation or whatever you got to do, because we want you to play our way. And so, no, I don't think there's a quarterback controversy. I still think it's Mac's job. He's a more talented quarterback than Bailey Zappi. There's a reason he was drafted in the first round. And when he comes back, I expect it to be his job. Otherwise, good win for the Patriots and for the Browns. We are truly starting to see them flounder, and they might be in a pretty rough shape by the time that Deshaun Watson gets to come back.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a million times before, and I think this is probably the reason. I mean, this is the reason why they couldn't stop the Patriots on defenses. Their defense is simplistic, and especially even for a third string guy. I mean, you look at. I mean, once again, you played Madden. Anyone that knows, you walk when you get up to the line of scrimmage and you kind of know what they're running. Like, okay, one safety on top. This is probably cover 3 or 2 safety. It's very simplistic. And the Browns, I think we saw a display of New England, just better coaching and philosophy and way to attack, and Cleveland's just like, we're just going to do what we do. We have more talent, which, yeah, you have more talent, and sometimes it works out, but there's a reason why this is the NFL, and there's a reason why New England's been doing this, been very successful for a long time. Once again, there's the Belichick naysayers saying that, he made Brady, saved him or whatever, all that yada yada nonsense. like New England's still somehow kicking at 3-3 with Bailey Zappi, winning games, and they're putting Bailey Zappi in winning positions. They're able to run the ball effectively this game. Like I already mentioned, Ramondre Stevenson's been a very good pickup once again. New England finding these running backs out of late in the draft, and I will give credit to New England here, a guy that we've kind of questioned. And I know it's early, but Tyquan Thornton, they found ways to utilize him. I remember we both were like, we weren't the only ones sitting here scratching our heads about Tyquan Thornton in the second round, but in his first probably full game back, he missed the early part of the season with an injury. Found a way to use him in the run game and he got a rushing touchdown there. And then obviously, he's been in the preseason, he was doing great in the passing game, and it showed here. And yeah, too, I do want to piggyback off what you said too. Credit Matt Patricia / Joe Judge, those guys calling the offense. They found ways to maximize their talent. They're primarily a run team, and they've been leaning on that. But then they've been fighting, this. Yes, they don't have a stud, but they have a bunch of really solid players. Devontae Parker has been contributing. That trade's looked solid, and he stayed healthy, which is really the main concern with him. Hunter Henry's been doing better as of late. Johnny Smith played this game, and he had some big plays. Jacoby Myers has been solid. And, they still have Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, who, many suspect they aren't really giving them many snaps to probably trade. But regardless, those guys, even if they can't trade them, those guys are gone after this season, contract-wise. So, I want to give the Patriots credit. Guess I'm mainly giving Bill Belichick credit here. I know it's the Browns, but, they're still finding ways to win when they're the lesser talented team on pretty much on both sides of the ball, to be honest. And, Cleveland... Also on offense, very simplistic. Even if Deshaun comes back, I think we've seen it like this game. Like if they can't get the run game going, they can't. Their pass game doesn't get going. Their pass game is completely reliant on the run game getting going. They do the play action stuff, but if they're behind, like in games like this, and they have to sit there in the shotgun and erase a 14-point deficit by just dropping back and throwing the ball. Even if Deshaun Watson's back there, he might be able to make plays, but I'm not confident in them consistently getting those drives because they just have a lack of creativity on offense. Like we already kind of mentioned with the Bears and how they're not really utilizing their guys very well. Same applies here for Cleveland, especially their receiving core. Because Amari Cooper, really 444. Yeah, he had a touchdown, but nothing real there. And then we know Njoku's talented, and Donovan's People-Jones has shown talent as well. So. Hey, we know they have a good run game, solid offense. Jacoby Myers is solid. 15 points is too less for this team. So, Cleveland. We'll see if they can right this ship before Mr. Watson gets back. And New England, they're still alive, like the Terminator. You gotta kill them dead, basically. Even if they're missing their quarterback and a bunch of other guys, and one of the running backs too, because Damian Harris didn't play this game. So. Big win for New England, staying alive in the AFC playoff race. But now we go to their counterparts in their division, and as the Jets beat my Green Bay Packers 27-10. One of the shockers of the weekend. I'll throw it to you first, John. What were your thoughts on this game?
I don't have much to say outside of Breece Hall. Great game, doing his thing. I'm a little concerned about the Jets passing game. I mean, I mentioned this when we were talking about, Zach Wilson coming back. They just with Joe Flacco, they're throwing 50 times a game. With Zach Wilson, they're throwing 18 times in this game. I don't know. I don't really understand it. So I don't know. It's just something to look out for because it surprises me how when Zach Wilson plays, this happened last year with Mike White too. I don't know. I really don't get it. Why they throw the ball way more with backup quarterbacks. But otherwise, I mean, good win for them. And it might be time to worry about the Green Bay Packers because this is getting a little concerning. But I'll throw it to you because it's obviously your team.
Where do I start? All right, let me start with the Packers defense. You mentioned Zach Wilson, the offense. I mean, Dak didn't have to throw much because the run game, like you mentioned, Breece Hall, 20 carries, 110 yards, and he was gashed as heck. Even Michael Carter had 6 carries for 41. And even Braxton Berrios, he had that jet sweep touchdown as well. I'll give I think we have to start with for the Jets and how they won this game. Robert Saleh, I think I mentioned it when we were doing our picks. He was with the Niners beforehand. So I think he showed this game. He has a very good idea of how to attack. I almost said the wrong LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, my Green Bay LaFleur, and his offense. Because once again, Matt LaFleur, guess what he derives from? Kyle Shanahan, who Robert Saleh was right, as his head coach. I'm sure he knew some of the concepts and ideas, and we're all over that. And I think we saw too, in regards to the Jets defense, it's a talented defense. I think many people need to realize that. Quinnen Williams, who is my defensive baller of the week this week, 2 sacks, blocked a kick, and forced a fumble as well. I think he got a fumble cover. I know he forced a fumble. I mean, he's finally shaping up and proving, he was worthy of that top 4. I think he was the 4th overall pick of his draft, which, I remember I loved him coming out, but he's looking good. Carl Lawson's looking like, he's proving to live up to his contract that they gave him last year, which, remember he tore his Achilles, like in training camp. He's one of their many injuries there. John Myers, who they gave an extension to last year, he's been really good. They still have CJ Mosley, who's finally staying healthy, and we all know can be an impact player when he's healthy. Quan Alexander's been solid, and he's been a part of the San Francisco system, so he knows this system. And like many are seeing, Sauce Gardner's the real deal too. And it doesn't help that he's probably definitely more talented than Alan Lazard and Romeo Doubs. He definitely showed that. And so I want to give credit to the Jets. I think, not going to say they're a Super Bowl team, but hey, they're 4-2 for a reason. They're a very talented team. Like I've said with Jacksonville, this team's been picking in the top 10, top 15 for years. Like at some point, the pieces got to fit, and credit to this coaching staff. They're making the pieces fit, as we see with Breece Hall and even Michael Carter. And like I said, I'm not too worried about the Jet passing game. They kind of got that big boost in the third, and maybe they're kind of easing Zach Wilson back into things, coming off that knee injury, and he hasn't really done anything, to concern you. So I'm not too concerned. But I am concerned about my Packers. I mentioned before the season, I was like, okay, I figure we're going to go through a rough patch at the beginning of the year and start figuring things out. But I'm worried we're not going to figure things out at this point. Christian Watson been dealing with some hamstring issues. Who knows how long that'll remedy him, especially a guy who's built on his athleticism. Doubs has been okay, but I don't think I'm going to sit here and say he's our number 1 guy, at least not yet. And I don't mean to bring this up every time, but man, would be nice if we had used that 1st-round pick on something else other than Jordan Love, other than a backup quarterback to hold the clipboard. Just saying. Would be nice, because the offensive line, Elton Jenkins, as much as I love him, he hasn't had his best year. Same with Bakhtiari. He really hasn't, been up to standard, and the rest of the interior of offensive line hasn't been great. So Green Bay run game hasn't been as dominant. And especially if teams know now at this point that Green Bay is going to be a run-first team, and then also the short, quick passes on top of that, and they're all over that. And other than that, I mean, the lack of a deep/medium, threat is relevant. I miss Devontae Adams, him consistently getting open. It just seems like Rodgers doesn't trust his receivers, and is just relying on these quick, short passes as opposed to letting plays develop, taking shots downfield. Maybe throwing some balls that are a little risky. But hey, he's Aaron Rodgers, and before he would be like, okay, I'll throw this in this tight window because I know A, I can get it there, and B, Devontae will be there and will catch it. So I think that's very prevalent, and like I already kind of alluded to, I'm not panicking on Joe Barry and the defense, but the defense, especially since we've invested so much, we invested 2 first-round picks this last year, and they've been doing okay, but there's a lot of other talent on this defense, and it hasn't lived up to the standard. And especially if we're going to be a run first team, lean on your defense. The defense has got to be better. I think Joe Barry's got to be a little more creative, maybe more aggressive. And I just overall disappointing. Obviously, I think this goes to show we're not a Super Bowl elite team. We're not like the Chiefs or the Bills. We're just a playoff team. I think that's best to cap us at that. I forgot if I said this last week just to end this, but we're a fringe top 10 team. We're in the 10 to 15 range if I had to do power rankings, probably. So that was my long rant about my Packers. Like I said, I don't think the sky is falling down. I think we'll probably still make the playoffs. Probably won't win the division, though, with how the Vikings are doing. But anyhow, we'll see. Maybe, shades of 2011, we scraped into the playoffs, and then, maybe desperation drives us and we figure things out. Who knows? That can happen to any team. But, credit to the Jets. They're figuring things out. My Packers, apparently Rodgers says he wants to simplify things. I don't know what's going on there. So I'm guessing. I wonder if Aaron is having second thoughts about coming back. Maybe he should have just retired or forced his way out. Who knows? But credit to the Jets. They go to 4-2. Packers fall to 3-3. Jets and that stacked AFC East. And unfortunately, now we have to move over to the good old AFC South. Although this game, I will say, was better than expected, as the Indianapolis Colts, they get the big win, 34-27. John, looks like Matt Ryan kind of found his touch again, as he had a great game, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They'd have to throw a lot. No Jonathan Taylor, no problem, though, for these Colts as they beat the Jaguars. What were your thoughts on this one?
Another game that I didn't feel like was the craziest of games. It was a good comeback for the Colts. Matt Ryan, he put on a show, so good for them. They had a great, they didn't start off hot, but it was comebacks in both the second quarter and the fourth quarter, right? Like the Jags started off hot, and then the Colts came back in the second quarter to even things up near halftime, and then they came back in the fourth quarter again after the Jags just kind of continuously kept putting up points. It was a weird game. Like Trevor Lawrence played well, kind of took what they gave him. He was 20-22, very efficient, but only for 165 yards. ETN had a really good game, which I love to see that they're finally getting him more involved. 8.6 yards per carry. Jermichael Hasty had that one massive 60-yard rushing touchdown, former Baylor guy. So love to see that. But other than that, I don't know. Like it's weird to harp on anything for the Jaguars because even defensively, right? Like they didn't do good. They allowed 34 points. But your guy Tyson Campbell, I think he was one of the highest graded defenders in the whole league this week. So he won his matchup. But then on the other side, you got Shaq Griffin losing to Michael Pittman pretty consistently. So I don't know. It was weird. I really don't know what to say about this game outside of the fact that some of the guys that we both kind of loved throughout the draft, I thought really popped. We both loved ETN. You like Tyson Campbell, and your guy Alec Pierce, he got the game-winning touchdown. He had a great game. He's really starting to come on as well because I think the last 2 weeks he had over 80 yards both games, and now he's got this touchdown, so he's having a good performance.
That touchdown almost saved me in a fantasy league. I didn't win me the game, but it got me 2 points ahead of the person, and then I end up losing. But shout out to him. Sorry, in regards to this one, you mentioned Shaq Griffin. And you're not the only person I mentioned him to. I know my boy Chris Sims in his podcast yesterday, he mentioned that basically in key situations, especially if they knew it was man-to-man, they attacked Shaq Griffin, as he already alluded
Michael
to.
Pittman won me the game in our Dynasty League, essentially.
Yeah, and it was great to see Michael Pittman. I think we forget, too, that he was dealing with some injuries early in the season, so I think they obviously missed him, and he seems to be doing very well now, as he had 13 for $134. He had a great game. And then, it was great to see Paris Campbell to produce. He can be their speedster, the guy that can kind of take the top off the defense or at least make them respect the deep ball. And then, it was good to see on a day where the Colts weren't going to be able to lean on the run game, that they could drop back and just lean on the pass game. The running back, I think it was Deion Jackson. Gosh, he killed me in our Dynasty League. He was the reason I lost. But he had, he contributed in the pass game as well. Hey, maybe this opens the door. Maybe this gets the offense going. Maybe they don't be a run first team. Maybe they use the pass to set up the run going forward. We'll see when Jonathan Taylor gets back. And for the Jaguars, it's tough to criticize Trevor Lawrence when he had a pretty good game, 20 for 22 wise. Probably could be a little more aggressive as there were some opportunities. But to be fair, I think we're kind of seeing that Jacksonville still is missing some pieces, still missing consistency as a young team. I will criticize Doug Peterson. He kind of has the Brandon Staley mindset of going for it a little bit too much. There was that key moment. I think it was early early fourth quarter. It was after the Colts made it 21-19. They get the ball down to like the Indianapolis. It was like 30. I'm looking here, 32. It was, I know it's 4th and 1, but like you're up 2. I mean, take the points, because guess what happened? They went for it on 4th and 1. They didn't get it. Colts went down, drove down, scored a touchdown. And then, you're playing from behind. And it's just, even if the Colts do score another touchdown, I mean, you gave them momentum with the 4th down stop. Who knows if they still get a touchdown after that? And at least you're up 5. So if they do score a touchdown on the next drive, it's still a field goal game. I mean, it's like a little nitpicky thing. I mean, because the Jaguars still end up scoring a touchdown to respond, and it went down to that final drive, and they just ran out of time. But just small criticism there. Then obviously, like we mentioned, defensively they still got some things to iron out. Still a very young defense, so they made some mistakes, and it's Matt Ryan and a desperate Colts team that had a few extra days to prepare. So good to see though that the Colts passing game has finally clicked, and hey, the Colts are 3-2-1. So everyone, including myself a little bit, that was kind of panicking on after we had these high expectations for them coming into the preseason. Seems like they're kind of slowly finding their way, and the good news is too, they get Jonathan Taylor back, and they'll get Shaquille Leonard back hopefully at some point as well. So they'll get some reinforcements on the way for the Colts, and the Jags, still figuring out just how to be consistent. So now we head over to Miami, to Hard Rock Stadium, where unfortunately the Minnesota Vikings, they pull out the win here, 24-16. Once again, a weird quarterback situation, John. It was I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the kid's name. Let me pull up his name. But it was not Shaq Thompson. Wrong guy. Skylar Thompson, excuse me, Skylar. Skylar Thompson got the start, and then I guess he got hurt. I wasn't really watching this game closely, and then Teddy Bridgewater was in, and it was a close game, but Vikings pulled away there at the end. What were your thoughts in regards to this one?
Good win for the Vikings. Nothing special here. I thought it was a little weird that Teddy Bridgewater was good enough, healthy enough to play the game, but not healthy enough to start for some reason. That doesn't really make sense to me. From Mike McDaniel's part, didn't really matter, I guess, because Skylar Thompson got ruled out pretty quickly, and Teddy came in. Vikings took care of business here. Quietly 5-1, like we mentioned. Not a lot of people are really paying attention to the Vikings. Not a lot of people really care, but they're looking good so far. So good for Minnesota. Good for Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson doing his thing. Dalvin Cook had a pretty lackluster game until he got like one massive 50-something yard carry. So he saved a lot of fantasy managers just off that one play. But other than that, I don't know. I didn't really pay attention much to this game. I was actually kind of surprised when I looked at the end and I saw that Tyreek and Jalen Waddle really turned it on, because from what I saw early, they weren't having the greatest of games. But I guess in the second half, they started putting up major yardage. Just didn't turn into many points because, unfortunately, Bridgewater turned the ball over a couple times. So, good win for the Vikings, but not really putting too much stock into this game for either team, just considering the Skylar Thompson starts the game and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're missing Tua. I know as we're Tua critics, but, he's obviously better than Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson. So he should be coming back next week. So that'll be good reinforcements for them. And I want to give the Vikings credit too. Previous years, if they couldn't, kind of like what I mentioned with Cleveland, because Kevin O'Connell came from Minnesota back when it was the previous coaching regime. Very similar issues, like very simplistic offense, and the offense was relying upon getting the run game going to get explosive plays in the pass game. Then that hasn't been the case as much this year. They've been able to rely more on the drop back pass game when the run game isn't going, like you mentioned, John. Dalvin Cook didn't have a great day, especially if you exclude that run. But it didn't matter because Kirk Cousins found ways to move the ball. It wasn't the craziest, 20 for 30, but 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, but not making the Kirk Cousins mistakes that, he's widely criticized for. And give credit to Minnesota's defense too, because they were huge in this. Zadarius Smith seems to be having a career revival here as he had a couple of sacks. I think I saw he had like 10 quarterback pressures or something. He had a really high like pressure rate. It was really, I saw a bunch of people, oogling over that over Twitter, which I would agree. He was very disruptive. Daniel Hunters seems to be finally healthy, and they just have a lot of contributors there. And so I'll give credit to their defense. Definitely better than it was previously. And like I said, their offense A has an identity, but B has answers to different situations and can lean on Kirk Cousins basically when the run game's not working. So credit to the Vikings there. And yeah, Miami, I expect they'll figure things out. Once Tua gets back, I expect the shit to be righted a little bit more. And once again, it's a pretty good Vikings team. They're 4-1 going into this game. So, I mean, it was a one-score game. I know they a little bit alluding since, let's see, I forget. Did they score? It was like a garbage time touchdown towards the end. But, I mean, for the most part, it's a kind of competitive game. So, credit to the Dolphins. But, huge win for the Vikings as their lead on the NFC North grows more and more. And they're starting, their only losses to the Eagles. So, maybe it's time people start giving more respect to them. But anyways, now we move on to Cincinnati, where the Bengals went to New Orleans, and they beat the Saints 30-26. Andy Dalton loses a chance at the Andy Dalton revenge game, but this game seems to be more, the storyline was more that the Bengals offense kind of started finding their way again, shades of last year. John, what were your thoughts on the Bengals victory?
Good win. The Saints defense is really concerning me all of a sudden. A lot of people thought this was going to be the strength of their team, but their secondary has not looked very good this year. And I think all of a sudden we're seeing which we talked about Tyrann Mathieu kind of slowing down, in our safety rankings throughout the season so far. But I think we're seeing the impact of you lose Marcus Williams, you trade Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you lost some key pieces in that secondary, and you replace them with guys who we thought would be serviceable replacements, but I don't know if it's a chemistry issue. I don't know. I just don't know what's going on, because I thought that there wouldn't be that much of a difference between Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu and the two guys that left, but clearly there is, because the secondary has just not been very good. And that's not to put everything on the safeties, because even the corners, like Paulson Adebo hasn't necessarily taken a big step this year. Marshawn Lattimore is good, but also I think I've mentioned this many times in the critiques against Diggs.
He did miss this game.
Okay, he did miss this game.
To be fair to him.
But even on the whole year, I think he gets a lot of credit, and he's still a great corner, but he gets a lot of attention for when he shuts down Mike Evans. But then there's other games where he plays other receivers and they have some success against him, and nobody talks about it. Because as I continue to bring up, everybody critiques Diggs for the amount of yards he gave up last year. Marshawn Lattimore was top 3. He was top 3 in yards allowed, but that nobody wants to hear that. Anyway, so the Saints secondary is starting to worry me because their defense is just giving up a lot of points. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase had a great game this week. I'm still concerned about Zach Taylor. Play calling it just lacks creativity, and it looked like at this point, because even in the first half, Jamar Chase was not that involved. It looked like in the second half, Joe Burrow just said screw it and just started throwing his way no matter what the play was when he saw anytime there was any sort of single coverage, and just let Jamar make plays, and that's what got him the win here. So shout out to the Bengals and Joe Burrow doing their thing. But yeah, for the Saints, I'm getting a little concerned here. And it is unfortunate they're dealing with a lot of injuries because, like you said, Lattimore doesn't play here. They're dealing with injuries at the quarterback spot. They have no receivers right now. So for the whole team and their results, I come a little bit of slack. But I am overall concerned about how their defense has not been as dominant as many expected them to be.
Yeah, I think it kind of you mentioned, the change in the secondary too up front. Cameron Jordan's still good, but he's really the only main difference maker. Marcus Davenport, much I liked him, he's been, spotty. And I even forgot the other kid that they drafted. I forgot in the first round, I think last year. I'm forgetting, but I think that says a lot that I am kind of forgetting. And then, Demario Davis is still solid. He had a couple sacks, but I mean, who knows how much he has left in the tank. And yeah, I mean, the safeties have been an issue. Tyrann Mathieu, it's been a shell of himself in terms of just everything. I mean, he was already an all right, tackler, but he kind of just doesn't seem to be as aggressive of a tackler as we saw in the DK Metcalf play a couple weeks ago or last week. Just doesn't seem to be the same guy. And it just sucks because the Saints, I did not expect them to score 26 points. They found ways to score. Shaheed had a big run. They got, Tre'Quan Smith had a catch, and they found different ways to use Taysom Hill too. But like you already alluded to, I mean, the Bengals basically just took advantage. Whenever they saw one-on-one with Jamar Chase, whenever the Saints didn't double chase is when they got burned for it basically in the second half. So PSA to other teams, just keep doubling to Jamar if you can. And obviously they're missing Marshawn Lattimore, so maybe that hurt them a little bit in regards to what they wanted to do. But regardless, it was a good bounce back game for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They haven't been putting up the numbers that everyone would love for them to do. And I will give Zach Taylor a little bit of credit, was more willing to lean on the pass game. Granted, it was a close competitive game that it was a one-score game for the most part throughout the whole game, so they kind of had to be in throw mode. But a big win for the Bengals as they stay at 500 at 3-3. Unfortunately for the Saints, they just can't get through this injury bug cleanly as they fall to 2-4. We'll see. Apparently, Chris Olave, they do have a short week, which doesn't help when dealing with injuries. But as they play on Thursday, but apparently I think I saw, because I have him in a bunch of leagues, Chris Olave hopefully should be back, and who knows if they'll get some other reinforcements at other spots. But we'll see how the Saints keep going post Sean Payton era. But now we head to the other disrespected teams, or one of them, and that is the New York Giants, John. As at home, they figure it out. They got out a win 24-20 over the Baltimore Ravens. That poor stat of the Ravens where I think they've led for a crazy amount, and they could easily be 6-0 basically, but blown some leads, and obviously we'll talk about that, go into that. But what are your thoughts on the Giants, man? They're 5-1, the G-men.
I don't get it. Somebody make sense to me how they're winning all these games. It just feels like they're so scrappy. There's not you look at the box scores even, it's not like anybody's dominating outside of Saquon when he has some good games. But even the last couple weeks, it's not like Saquon's going out and putting up 200 yards on the ground. He's still performing, but it's not like he's just hard backpacking the whole roster. He had 83 yards. That's not, the craziest of performances. It's solid, but it's not crazy. So I don't know. I don't understand how this team's winning games. I got to shout out their coaching staff once again. I got to shout out the players for their executing. I think a key thing for the Giants too is they're not turning over the ball a ton, which has been a really big issue for Daniel Jones and the Giants players in the past. So that they're just playing safe. Their defense is playing well, and that's really all I can say. I have no clue how they're winning these games. It's impressive. I still stand by my statements and everything I've ever said about Daniel Jones. He's not impressed me. I know he, led the fourth quarter comeback or whatever in this game, but if we look at the grand scheme of his performance on the year, he's thrown over 200 yards once through 6 games. He's got 5 passing touchdowns on the year, and his grades are relatively similar to previous years. So really what I'm crediting this to is the coaching staff is just putting him in positions to where he's not needing to do anything crazy. And I will give Daniel Jones credit. He's not turning the ball over, like I said. So I think he's improved in that regard, but he's not also then making plays. It's for example, somebody's wants to lose weight and build muscle. It's okay, he's losing the weight, which is great, but he's not building the muscle. So I don't think he's getting that much better. He's just playing safer. And I mean, that's leading to wins. And so, that's what you want him to do, I guess. So yeah, good win for the Giants, and 5-1. Better than I thought they'd be on the year. If you asked me before the season, I would have expected around this win total, maybe at the end of the season. So the fact they're already here, good for them.
Yeah. Man, the New York markets are going crazy right now, at least football wise.
I mean, Yankees just advanced in the baseball playoffs, so they're probably going crazy over there too.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the Mets got knocked out earlier, but New York's probably more Yankee than Mets. I don't know. I could be wrong. There's probably be someone in the comment section saying otherwise, but I don't live in New York, so I wouldn't know, nor do I care. But yeah, regards to this one, I mean, like you already said, I mean, the Giants, they just love scrappy games, and I think they've just kind of embraced kind of playing ugly. A lot of ball control is like their name in the game. Just keeping drives alive, these long drives, eat up time. And like you mentioned, as long as they don't make mistakes, kind of puts pressure on your offense because then you have to make your drives work. And, fortunately for Baltimore, I think we jinxed Justin Tucker because I think I think I saw he did miss a kick this game. So that was unfortunate. Yes, he did. Sorry, just confirming here now. And for Baltimore, just unfortunately, just for their defense, I know I had some faith in their secondary, and I still do, but I think we're seeing, no difference makers in the front four. Calais Campbell's, I think he's finally starting to hit that old age, and they're still trotting out Justin Houston. I mean, they just grabbed Jason Pierre-Paul, and he seems to be their best pass rusher, and I think we can all admit that his best days are behind him. I mean, Patrick Queen's been solid, but once again, he's more of a coverage, linebacker. So they're not really getting any difference makers up there, and their secondary has been a little bit of a mess, as we've already alluded to. I think there's no Marcus Williams in this game also, so once again, throwing another new piece in there and trying to figure it out. And then for Baltimore's offense, like I said, just late in the game, unfortunately, just Lamar, it was, when they're up 20-17, Lamar has that, and just has a bad interception, makes a bad choice, throwing kind of across his body and picked off, gave the Giants a short field, boom, touchdown. And then unfortunately, he got sacked, and credit Kayvon Thibodeau, forced the sack and I think he forced the fumble as well. And that was ball game. And once again, like we already, I forget the stat, but Baltimore was leading for majority of this game. They were in control. It was just literally the last two drives end up in turnovers, and that was it. Game over. So credit the Giants for executing in crucial moments just a little bit better than some other teams. We mentioned with the Green Bay game, they made some key late adjustments. Hey, you're not getting Aaron Rodgers, so just put your hands up, bat the ball down. And then late in the game here, Lamar kind of handed him that pick, but the guy was there. He did his job. So credit to the Giants that they're finding ugly ways to win, but a win's a win. And like I said with my Packers, all you got to do is get in the dance in the playoffs, and you can maybe get hot and make some noise. So the Giants definitely making a lot of noise at 5-1, and unfortunately for Baltimore, they're getting the wrong kind of noise, as there are major concerns, or not major, but there are concerns for their defense going forward. And for some reason, they signed Deshaun Jackson today, which I don't know. I mean, good for Deshaun, but I don't know what. I don't know. Maybe something's up with Bateman in his foot, because he has been out for a couple weeks. So maybe, kind of like what we saw. We'll talk about later with some of these other teams, getting some insurance. But now we head to probably the biggest shocker of the weekend, of the Sunday especially, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They won. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They didn't just cover. They won. They beat the Buccaneers 20-18. Yeah, Tom Brady played the whole game. So, long story short, John, what were your thoughts on this unforeseen upset?
Good for Pittsburgh here. Had a little quarterback change at some point, because I think Pickett got a concussion, maybe.
Yeah, he got knocked out with concussion.
So good for Trubisky staying ready and doing what he needed to do. Other than that, I don't know. I didn't pay attention to this game that much, because I thought it was not going to be that important. And then all of a sudden, I tune in late and Tampa Bay lost. I don't know what to say about their offense.
By the way, no Minka Fitzpatrick for the Steelers either. So no Minka, no TJ Watt, and they held the Bucks in check.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about this Buccaneers offense. They're just not playing very well. Tom Brady's not been very good on the year. The run game is just not that efficient. Like both their running backs average 3 yards a carry. I don't know. I'd love to blame it on any one thing, but it's like you got a lot of talent here. Like, I mean, I guess there's still concerns about the interior of the offensive line, but I mean, even then, like the Steelers didn't have that many sacks. I think they had they had 2 sacks.
That's 2.
That's it. So it's like, and Tom Brady, like under pressure, doesn't I don't know. It's a weird situation for the Bucs, because they're 3-3 now. And I don't know. I still think they're in the driver's seat for the division, but they're making life a lot easier on the rest of those teams because they're just not looking very good right now.
Yeah, we'll say, although there's only 2 sacks, Pittsburgh, I'll give him credit, found ways to generate pressure, make Tom get the ball out before he wanted to, or maybe not in the right platform that he wanted to. I mean, it's obvious but he was yelling at his O-line. So at one point that clip went kind of viral, which is interesting because then it's very interesting because there's other stuff going on with Brady. If you're following his personal life, he probably right. He probably is going through a divorce, I think. Right. So that got that going on and, missing his O-line and maybe, who knows, maybe I just feel like who knows what Bruce Arians is doing behind the scenes. I'm not saying he's like meddling, but maybe they're missing Bruce Arians and, maybe just a few little points he would make. Although too, they just have lost some talent. Like you mentioned, their interior line's not great. And really the only running back to have lean on is Leonard Fournette and, credit Pittsburgh too. They didn't let the run game get going. So they were able to find ways to slow down the passing game, even without Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then on offense, they found ways to move the ball. And I will say too, I like that they kind of, especially with Pickett, they said, okay, we can't protect the quarterback. So we're going to be a very kind of like what Brady does, a very quick passing offense, just a bunch of short passes, get the ball out quick so that our quarterbacks don't get killed. And, I will give credit to Mitch Trubisky too. Like you mentioned, he came in, he was ready, made some plays, even off script too, which was good for them. And glad to see Chase Claypool, put in another solid game. I'm already seeing, I hate seeing this because like it gets my hopes up. I'm like, this is not going to happen. But I've already been seeing like Claypool to Green. Oh man, I would love it.
Listen,
because Pittsburgh, you have an embarrassment of riches. You have Pickens and you already paid Deontay Johnson.
All I'm saying is I don't feel like the price would be that big. So why not? Aaron Rodgers is at the end of his career. I think it might be time to cash in if you want to win with him.
And I forgot to mention this my Green Bay point, but Green Bay just doesn't. I don't know what the mindset is. They just are stingy with the price. They're like the people that you trade with to value their assets way too much and essentially just don't want to trade. They're just, it seems like they're just talk and trade. And there's reports of Odell. So anyways, not making that Green Bay, but we'll see what happens to Claypool. Cause I think he's kind of like most of these Pittsburgh receivers, kind of gotten the short end of the stick in regards to, last year's a Big Ben. And then this whole quarterback thing has been kind of a little bit of a mess and they haven't been able to really protect their guys, their offensive line hasn't been able to protect enough for them to generate deep passes or even a run game to generate the deep play action game. But nonetheless, good win for the Steelers and credit Mike Tomlin. Like I said, he's always going for the win. They could have easily folded 10 up and say, all right, well, time for us to tank for a good old lineman. But Mike Tomlin, kind of like I said with, I forgot who I said, but with New England, there's a reason he hasn't had a losing season. He creates a very good culture, a very winning culture. And no Minkah, no TJ, lose Kenny Pickett halfway through the game. No problem, guys. We're still going to figure out ways to win. So, big props to Mike Tomlin and the gang for pulling out an unexpected win there. So, big win for the Steelers. And like John mentioned, we'll see how much implication that this loss will have for Tampa going forward. But now we head to one of the other games, starting to get into the afternoon slot here, and that is the LA Rams. They took care of business, beating the Panthers 24-10. Allen Robinson had a bounce back game. That was key. Unfortunately, though, they did lose one of their tackles. The only one that was the only starter from their Super Bowl, Note Bloom, he went down with an Achilles injury. So offensive line issues will continue to plague them, but ran the ball pretty solidly. Ran the ball for over 100 yards as a team, something they haven't really done well. And like I mentioned, Cooper Kupp always does him, but Allen Robinson more involved this week and, had a pretty solid game as well. So that was good to see for the offense. But for me, and before I throw it over John, mainly, and I think this is going to have to be the story going forward, is that this defense is going to have to be, very good, very elite. They're going to have to cause turnovers, get stops, just be a very good defense, because otherwise, I just don't see them winning many games, many games against the elite teams. And I will give it is Carolina, and let's just be real here. Carolina really scored 3 points on offense because the 7 points was a pick six. So yeah, for Carolina, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But obviously, I think we all know they need a line, they need a quarterback probably at this point. So they are definitely cruising along that path towards a top, probably the number one pick, as they also got rid of Robbie Anderson, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But yeah, John, any other thoughts / add-ons in regards to this one?
I don't really have any thoughts on the game, honestly, because it was kind of business as usual for the Rams. Still didn't have the greatest of offensive performances, and we got the Cam Akers situation going on where they're openly saying that they're probably going to trade him. That's such a weird situation. But I think this game is interesting because I do want to transition to maybe talking about some potential trades for the Panthers, because obviously, like you said, they're probably looking at being a contender for the number one overall pick. And at that point, you might as well have a little bit of a fire sale because, as some people want to point out, they think that you're as close. They think you're a lot closer than you really are. Like, the Panthers are not a very good team. They lack in a lot of spots. Yes, they have key players like McCaffrey, DJ Moore, all these guys. But you need a complete football team, and holding on to those guys while you're rebuilding is kind of worthless because by the time that you might be good again, they might be too old. So I've already heard that like Derek Brown and Brian Burns are probably off the table, but I have heard they're fielding offers for McCaffrey, and I assume that they're fielding offers for DJ Moore. Hypothetically, if they were to be traded, where would you like to see them go, and where maybe some other potential spots you could see them maybe land?
So for McCaffrey, I mean, this will be a game breaker, but Buffalo will be an amazing pick there. I would say Kansas City too. I mean, but I just don't think Kansas City has the money, but who the frick knows, because they always find ways to make it fit.
Today they restructured Kelsey's contract and freed up about $4 million in cap space. I'm not saying it's for McCaffrey or DJ Moore, but just the timing of it, it looks like they're maybe trying to free up money to make something happen.
I just okay. Well, I just don't. I want to know their accountants just in the pay. I've mentioned this joke to you, but like, what the heck? Like, how do they find ways to keep paying the because they're gonna find a way to pay Orlando Brown. I'm just waiting to hear that extension. And then, anyways, so those are the two main ones for those two guys. I'm trying to think. No, not Baltimore. I'm trying to think mainly for McCaffrey. I know a lot of people. We talked about this. I know a lot of people want to say the Rams. I'm just like, even with their offensive line isn't very good. I mean, he will contribute in the pass game, so maybe that will offset that. And maybe it'll elongate his career going forward. But yeah, for DJ Moore, obviously, I think my Packers would be a great destination. New England, they're lacking a true number one probably there as well. Trying to think. Probably I won't be maybe the Giants. Just saying. And we mentioned they have a lack of receivers, but who knows, because they've already invested so much into the receivers.
I think the tough part there is how much they're paying Kenny Galladay.
Yeah, so they'd have to maybe do the old like Oklahoma City thing where they dump Galladay in a pick somewhere so they take his contract. I don't know. But honestly, I just want to say too, as I'm thinking of more destinations, I think this is kind of obvious to everyone. I think obviously McCaffrey gets moved before DJ Moore because they just gave DJ Moore a contract. He's a wide receiver. He probably will play through that contract. As of McCaffrey, I think we've all seen, and you've definitely been on top of this, where running back shelf lives are relatively short. And I think we're starting to see McCaffrey, especially in recent years, deal with a lot of injuries, and he's not the biggest running back. So his expiration date may be coming soon. I'm trying to think of any other spots. I mean, San Fran, I don't think would ever trade for McCaffrey or DJ Moore.
Apparently, they've been listed as a team that's rumored to have reached out for McCaffrey.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe, and that would make sense. Maybe they want to use McCaffrey more as the Deebo Samuel role, and Deebo can be more a wide receiver and elongate his career. That would be scary. Maybe. Oh, so for DJ Moore, I would love to see him in LA. The Chargers too. We mentioned they need a deep threat. Could you imagine? like dealing with those three receivers too. You got kind of everything. You got the big guy and Mike Williams. You got the speed, quick guy and DJ Moore that can kill you deep. And then Keenan Allen.
Now would be the time to do it
technician,
because you got Herbert on a rookie contract, but also I think that'd be like the first team to commit over $20 million per year to 3 different receivers. That might be a tough pill to swallow.
I forget they paid Mike Williams. Yeah. Okay.
And I think they gave Keenan Allen a pay raise. I mean, like I said, with Herbert on his rookie contract, now's the time to do it. So I don't know if they can.
Last one is a dark horse, but Tennessee. We've seen that they're missing AJ Brown. They're missing that deep element. I mean, Robert Woods has been okay at that, but I think we're starting to see Robert Woods towards the latter end of his career post ACL injury, and then Treylon Burks. He's a rookie. He's still figuring it out, and he also dealing with an injury right now. So I want the Titans as like a dark horse. Maybe since, like I said, they're obviously missing AJ Brown at this point. But yeah. Any add-ons for you?
I think just for McCaffrey, the tough part is his options are a little limited because, like you said, he's a running back. Shelf life's really small, big contract. So I just feel like there's like you said, Chiefs, Bills. Those make a lot of sense. I could see the Niners happening. I really could because we talk about
maybe.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Maybe Jacksonville too for DJ Moore because, like I said, they still only have like a number one guy.
They could make sense. They got a lot of cap space to blow. I could see maybe Chicago if they were willing to make the pay up. I don't know if like
I hope not. Jeez.
I don't know if DJ Moore would want to go there, but I could see them maybe doing it. The problem is they don't have like draft picks because they traded for Justin Fields. I heard Dallas maybe getting DJ Moore. Not the biggest fan of that. Just because I don't really want to trade an asset for another receiver. Like fit wise, I think it'd be great, and I like it, but I don't want to pay the price essentially when we already have like a ton of money invested.
Gallup, Lamb,
Gallup. CeeDee Lamb's going to get paid eventually. Brown has actually been very solid.
Yes, I'm saying,
and looked very good after like years of being a primarily known as a run blocker. You just drafted Jalen Tolbert. Like I think I wouldn't want to do that.
Mix those two up.
Anyway, so I like honestly to me for McCaffrey, the only teams that make sense are Bills, Chiefs, 49ers, and maybe the Rams. Because the Rams make sense because they're very aggressive. Not that like I think they should, because I think they should be devoting assets to improving the offensive line. But if for some reason they think that like maybe certain guys will get healthy come playoff time or whatever, or they're going to sign Eric Fisher, or they can convince Whitworth to come out of retirement or something, I don't know. Then maybe I could see them going after McCaffrey, and that would be really interesting to see how they would use him and Cooper Kupp. But I don't see it happening just because of how crucial the offensive line is. And for DJ Moore, I just think there's endless possibilities because of the fact that he's still a relatively young, talented receiver who could play for the next 10 years in the NFL. So, yeah.
Definitely at least the next 5 to 7.
Yeah, well, the next 5 is, I think you play the next 5 to 7 at like a high level. I'm saying like he could be in the NFL for like another decade, not necessarily like at an elite level the whole time, but like at least from like running backs, McCaffrey, like realistically, I would say I wouldn't be shocked to retire within the next 5 years or less because maybe injuries or something catch up with him. It's a tough position.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and just to add on to your point as a final kind of cherry on top, I mean, we all saw the rise and fall of Todd Gurley relatively quickly. Granted, he had lingering knee issues that kind of became prevalent later, but you never know, especially with that how physical that position is. So yeah, Rams, they take care of business. Obviously, the Panthers, like I said, heading towards that first overall pick. We'll see if they embrace the fire sale, and maybe if they get an offer they can't refuse. Which is what I kind of am assuming they're just kind of playing. Like they're not actively shopping guys, but they're listening to offers, like I said with McCaffrey. So, excuse me. So maybe a team pays up and gets one of those guys. We'll see. Hopefully Green Bay does, but they won't. Anyways, going to keeping it in the Rams division, where the Seattle Seahawks, they pull out a win over the Cardinals 19-9. That I think they were the worst defense coming into this game. Well, they proved otherwise because they held the Cardinals down to 9 points. So, John, what were your thoughts here on... Oh, sorry. Let me go first, and then we'll throw it to you. Because our annual Cliff Kingsbury offense, not very creative, like I just said. Seahawks defense, one of the worst. I think it was rated the worst going into this week. They're all over the Cardinals stuff. I mean, Kyler Murray really had to do it all, and it definitely wasn't enough. He was their leading rusher. And there's just no rhythm and flow to this Arizona offense. If it isn't Kyler making magic, there's not really any other ways they get creative, explosive plays. I know they're going to get DeAndre Hopkins. I know they just traded for Robbie Anderson. I honestly don't think Anderson's going to help much. I mean, really couldn't figure it out with Andy Isabella. John and I definitely have. We've seen the route trees that Cliff Kingsbury throws his guys. I don't think it's going to help. And it's a shame because their defense has been solid, the Cardinals' defense, and they're solid this game. It's just the offense isn't helping. And for Seattle, Kenneth Walker looking to be really good. I think was it? Oh, that was Damian Pierce. But anyways, he's doing really well. He's in the second, and it's really his first game starting. He had a really good game. And Geno, he wasn't lining up the world this game like he has been in previous weeks, but been solid enough where they don't lose the game. He makes a couple of plays. But yeah, I would be sounding the alarm in Arizona if I was an Arizona fan. I haven't talked to our resident Arizona fan, but yeah, I feel like I've said this a lot, but I would assume Cliff's days are numbered, especially at this point. And every game from here on out, he may be playing for his future. But John, what are your thoughts on the Cardinals Seahawks?
I don't really have much else to add outside of shout out Tariq Woolen, 4 picks on the year, UTSA corner.
Yes.
Looking very good so far. Late round draft pick, looking very good. But I do want to talk about Cliff and should Cliff Kingsbury be fired? I'm a very big proponent that he should. For anyone watching who isn't familiar with me, I'm a Big 12 football fan, so I watched plenty of Cliff Kingsbury while he was at Texas Tech. A lot of my family friends went to Texas Tech. A lot of my friends went to Texas Tech. I've watched Texas Tech football plenty. And Kingsbury there with Patrick Mahomes, I think he got a lot of credit for Mahomes being all of a sudden good in the NFL, but there was just a lot of critiques about Mahomes when he was going into the league, and all of a sudden when he gets to the league, like Andy Reid's able to figure those kind of things out, and they weren't ever really that good when Mahomes was there. And I think that's a Cliff Kingsbury thing. He's always had this issue with him being good in the first half of the season and then sucking in the second half of the season. And now all of a sudden this year they're sucking in the first half of the season. The people that have said that they should keep him have constantly told me that they've improved every single year. Well, guess what? Now they're getting worse. They started off last year so amazing, and then they were terrible and got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Kyler Murray looked so dejected after the game, just saying that it was the most frustrated he's been since his rookie year, and things are just so difficult. And it's just I've said it before, I don't understand how Cliff Kingsbury is able to fall upwards. Name me any other coach in the history of football that has been fired from their alma mater. The school he attended fired him, and then he became a head coach in the NFL immediately following that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Quick caveat, he didn't even get a head coaching job after that.
He was the offensive coordinator for USC, but I think that was mainly
so he didn't even
the timing of it.
It wasn't even a lateral movement, though.
Yeah, I mean, he got a worse job, but then I think that was just the timing of it, that the Cardinals hadn't fired their head coach at the time, so they weren't interviewing people like him yet. And so I don't think, it just shows he didn't expect to get a head coaching offer, so he just took a job, which USC offense coordinator, that's a great job. But, anyway, the point stands of how do you fall upwards? That's literally Cliff Kingsbury's entire career. The route trees have been pitiful. The play calling is just not that good. And as you said, they just played Seattle, who was they were giving up over 30 points a game coming into this game. They allowed 9 to an offense featuring Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. There is Zach Ertz. There is talent on this offense. And so I don't care that DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. There's still a talented offense that is way more talented than a defense being head up by Jordan Brooks and Tariq Woolen and all these guys. And shout out to them because they're playing well. So it's no shot at them. But like I said, they're giving up 30 points a game. So there's just no excuse. I've been saying it for years. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury was the right hire in that moment, and there's never been a point that I feel like he's proven me wrong, and all of a sudden everybody else is getting on the train, but guess what? They just extended him and the GM fire Cliff Kingsbury, Arizona. You're wasting Kyler Murray's young years when you could be competing potentially for championships if you had some better decision making.
Hey, well, I just want to note that I've been second in command here in regards to the fire Cliff train. We've both been here, but I don't have much else to add. I mean, they don't run the ball. They can't run the ball, which is fine. I mean, the Bills don't run the ball, but we see the Bills, yes, their expertise is passing, and they do it darn well. They move the ball every game and every which way, and there's just no excuse to. And they've gone through 2 different offensive coordinators. You know, Brian Daboll, and then he moved. Now we're seeing their new OC. It's still, pretty much business usual over there. And meanwhile, in Arizona, it just hasn't translated. And I think it's time to move on, especially if Kyler's the guy. I think you got to move on. And they have too much talent. It's unfortunate they traded for Hollywood Brown. He gets hurt. Even then, that trade I felt was a little overpriced because they traded their first round pick for. And granted, I know AJ Brown. I'm comparing it kind of to the AJ Brown trade because he got traded for the first rounder. Granted, it was mainly because Philly was ready to extend him, but I'm just I forget they have a separate GM, right? Right, because it was both Cliff and the GM both got extended.
Steve Keim is their GM.
Steve Keim.
A lot of people make fun.
I'm just saying too, Steve Keim, he survived the previous head coach too. I was surprised he didn't get fired then. He probably should have, because Kyler Murray first overall, that kind of fell in your lap. Isaiah Simmons, it took them a while to figure, but even late in the draft, second, third, fourth round guys, they haven't really been hitting on those picks. I mean, like I said, yes, they hit on Kyler, jury's still out on Zaven and Isaiah, but otherwise, like those second, third, fourth round guys, those are the key pieces. Those are like, some of your key depth guys. They got guys like Akeem Butler, Andy Isabella, both those wide receivers gone. And Byron Murphy, he's been all right. But other than that, like I just haven't been impressed by what they've done. And then free agency wise, I mean, no offense, they weren't the only team, but gave a lot of money to JJ Watt. And unfortunately, I mean, they kind of should have seen towards the latter years in Houston, very injury prone, as he got older, and he's still dealing with injuries now. So he's not the same difference maker, but they ponied up and gave him a lot of money. So I think addition with Cliff, Steve Keim needs to be looked at as well in regards to criticism. So we'll see what happens. But big win for Seattle, as who would have guessed? Seattle's 3-3 and the Cardinals are 2-4. So now we move on to the game of the weekend, and at least this one lived up to the billing, and it was the Mahomes versus Josh Allen part 4 or 5, whatever the heck it is. These teams will be playing each other every year, basically. But this round, once again, went to Josh Allen in the regular season as the Bills beat the Chiefs 24-20. What were your thoughts on this showdown, John?
Shout out to the Bills. Stephon Diggs, my offensive baller of the week, won me my fantasy game. Bills they're a serious team. It was crazy that Tony Romo before the game said felt like a 24-20 kind of game. And that's exactly what happened. The guy is a wizard.
Romo Stradamus.
Yeah, it was actually really crazy how he literally called the exact score. Other than that, I don't know. I do find it interesting that all of a sudden, like, everybody's jumping on the Josh Allen is better than Mahomes bandwagon. And I still think it's debatable. I think that's just like we both said Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the league before this even started. So it's not like anything's changed on our end. But I feel like that's just the classic casual fan, what have you done for me lately kind of mentality of their most recent memory of Patrick Mahomes is him throwing an interception to lose the game. And their most recent memory of Josh Allen is him hurdling a dude on the game-winning drive. So they're like, oh, of course Josh Allen is better. I've been saying this the whole time, even though we were on that bandwagon way before they were. So anyway,
and our receipts are on our socials.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, good win for the Buffalo Bills. Like I said, they're a force to be reckoned with, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head before the game started, because I actually picked the Chiefs to win. You took the Bills to win. You said this is a game where you're going to miss Tyreek Hill, and I know from the box score, Juju Smith-Schuster had a good game. It was kind of some like missed tackle opportunities on Juju that led to some big plays, and he did have like a solid impact, but they didn't have that game breaker that it was just like, okay, at any moment the Chiefs could just strike, because we know the Bills are a very good defense. And for the most part, that was what happened. They kept a lot of things in front of them. And while Stephon Diggs was on the other end making like huge plays, like I said, although their stats technically were similar in terms of like overall receiving yardage and the touchdown, there wasn't that person on the other end on the Chiefs side that like really puts fear in the defense on what they could do any given play.
I think too, just to add on, Bills, especially their front four, gotten obviously better. Von Miller, huge year. I think he had a huge sack, if I remember correctly, towards the latter part of the game. And then he had 2 sacks. And then, Shaq, they still have some other good depth. Like, what the Bills were missing the past few years was like a go-to guy on defense, like a closer per se, a Von Miller type, where he's going to get a key stop or a huge sack in certain moments, or like I said with Shaq Lawson, you got a sack. At least get the attention off these other guys that aren't obviously as good as a Von Miller, but like the Gregory Rousseaus and the Shaq Lawsons and the AJ Epenesas, like these, they have pretty good depth up front in the front four for the Bills. And now that they have their, the cream of the crop guy and then everyone else below him, their defense is starting to, is starting to figure out the Chiefs basically. And obviously it helps that Tyreek is gone because once again, you're not putting that quandary of who do we double. We can only pick. Do we double Tyreek or do we double Kelsey? And we saw in the playoffs last year, I mean, basically Mahomes was just looking for whoever wasn't being doubled. And unfortunately this year for Mahomes, I mean, Kelsey still had a really good game, but because there's no Tyreek, Buffalo was able just to play the shell. We're not going to let you beat us deep coverage. You're going to have to dissect us, death by 1,000 cuts, bend, don't break type stuff. And they did that well. While, the Buffalo offense, it was kind of similar to Chiefs defense, the same kind of thing, but Buffalo offense was able to execute better. And also, maybe get a little more in the run game, as I will shout out Devin Singletary too. He had a solid game, 17 carries, 85 yards. Just, kind of creating a little bit of the balance for Buffalo to keep the Chiefs front four, or just the front seven, basically, off kilter. But, in regards to the Josh Allen over Mahomes thing, I mean, if some people were to say that, they feel Mahomes is higher, I'm not going to sit here and argue. I mean, these two are the top two. I mean, I think that should be consensus, at least in my opinion, that these two are the cream of the crop of quarterbacks, and then whoever else you have.
And there's a gap. Like at this point, I think there's a gap because Rodgers, I would say before the season started was probably like up there with them in like that tier 1, but has not had the greatest start as of right now of the year. I'm not gonna say Rodgers washed or anything, but I just think like those two are just playing at such a high level that it's just like.
I mean, they're making plays with the legs and running, and they're just like they're like the pinnacle of what the quarterback positions should be, really, at this point athletically. Like we've seen Brady and Manning, what you can do inside the pocket, throwing, being searcher, being the reading defenses. But now I think we've evolved to the point where now these guys can do those things, but they can also hurdle freaking defenders or sit there and outrun people and make, throws with their left hand or off schedule or underhand. Like we're starting to see like these two are the pinnacle of the quarterback position going forward. So here's to many more Mahomes, Allen showdowns. This won't be the last, I'm sure. So glad we got treated to a very good game. And, it sucks that Kansas City, obviously Kansas City probably won't win that game, but it's not as tough of a loss, losing to a very good team, the Bills, that you'll see down the line. So it'll be interesting to see the rematch, how both teams adjust, but that's for a later date. But now we go to the Sunday night game, John. And unfortunately, your Dallas Cowboys, the Cooper Rush train, got derailed as he finally kind of came back to earth. I'm doing air quotes for people listening audio-wise because, I mean, he really never really left the earth, to be honest, if you were keeping an eye on things like John and I were. But anyways, the Eagles win 26-17. Their defense came up huge mostly this game, like I alluded to. So, John, what's your synopsis of your Dallas Cowboys taking the L on Sunday night?
You go first, because I am actually going to
okay.
I'm going to take my time on this one a little bit.
I mean, okay, so I will say I was just really Philly being on I guess, on top of Dallas's game plan that they've been doing with Cooper Rush, which was, I mean, credit to their offense, Philly offense. I think they should stay more patient with the run, but, you know, in the second quarter especially, they leaned on the run game, were able to just do the thing where they're the bind that they put you in, where they're either going to start gashing with the run game with Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders, and then once you start creeping up, they hit you with the deep bomb. And especially if it was a good way to neutralize Dallas' defense best position group, which is their front four. The front four has been creating a lot of havoc. I think Micah Parsons didn't have a sack until the second half, mainly, but maybe because Lane Johnson went out too.
I don't think he actually had a sack on the game.
Or a pressure, I think. I saw something like that where he was... he didn't have a great first half, but that's not all on him. He's getting double teamed a lot and such. And Philly's a very good front offensive line too. So I think Dallas is already kind of put in a bind that way. And then on the flip side, like I already alluded to, it's a game where you miss Dak Prescott because Cooper Rush, they were all over the short passes and, you know, just, you know, basically daring Cooper Rush to beat him deep. You know, he really couldn't, you know, got pressure on him as well, and he threw some picks. Yeah, so Dallas couldn't lean on the, you know, okay, let's run the ball type scenario and keep it close / we'll get the lead and just manage the game and manage Cooper Rush. And Cooper Rush won't screw up the game. And not to say this is all his fault. You know, I'm not going to say and blame him for all 3 interceptions or this entire loss, but I mean, there's a reason he's a backup. There's a reason that you know, he wasn't a first, second round pick or, you know, wasn't given the Dak money. So hopefully this kind of kills the narrative that for some reason people were running out there that, you know, maybe he should be the starter over Dak. This isn't a Colin Kaepernick or Alex Smith situation at all, like we've seen. So, yeah, I just think, like we've said, this was the game where we finally saw, okay, Cooper, can you put the offense on your shoulders since you're down double digits and you can't really get the run game going? And we got our answer. So not that, you know, we were expecting a different answer, but we were justified, you and I, per se. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, to anyone who said that Cooper Rush is better than Dak, where you at now? Where you at now? That's all I'm going to say. Where you at now? It's very clear the whole time that Cooper Rush is not better than Dak Prescott. You can just look at the offensive numbers on the season. Even right now, like the Cowboys offense is like one of the bottom 5 offenses in the NFL. But they're winning games because their defense is balling out and their offense is doing enough. So, you know, I'm glad that Dak is back. To all the people who wanted to say that Cooper Rush is better because they were winning games, well, all of a sudden the defense allows over 26 points or over 20 points for the first time all year, and they lose. That being said, I don't want to like sit here and harp on Cooper Rush because he did exactly what you want a backup quarterback to do. I did not expect him to win this game. I picked the Eagles, and this is like one of the few times on the year actually picking against the Cowboys that it was not because of the pod curse. It's because I actually thought the Eagles would win this game. And in an easy fashion too, just because I expected Cooper Rush to have a tougher time against this Eagles defense.
If only Brown came down with that touchdown, I might have covered.
Yeah, Noah Brown. Yeah, unfortunately, the butt cheek was just slightly out of bounds. Great catch though. Yes. Anyway, also if only, you know, Cooper Rush didn't get just absolutely demolished when CeeDee Lamb was wide open for that like 60-yard touchdown at the very end of the game. Could have backdoor covered at the very end. Anyway, so yeah, don't want to harp on Cooper Rush. He's a great backup. He did what he needed to do, and I think he's just earned himself quite a bit of money in the NFL because whether it's Dallas or somebody else, somebody's going to sign him to be their backup because they saw that he was able to do what it takes to win games. But he did throw 3 interceptions. They did turn the ball over multiple times, and that was the reason I think they lost the game. Honestly, take this for what you will, because I still think the Eagles are a very good team. But after that game, I felt way more confident about Dallas's chances come playoff time than I did going into that game. The Eagles did not win in my opinion, such a convincing fashion that I did not sit there and think that the Dallas Cowboys can potentially, and I would say probably, beat them when they play them in Dallas in December. And assuming that, you know, things don't change dramatically, if they match up in the playoffs, I would feel pretty confident, assuming health. Because honestly, so 13 of their points came off of Cowboys turnovers. And this is short field, like with the drives that they had. Short field because there was one turnover where Cooper Rush throws the interception, and sorry, I'm pulling up the game right now because I don't have the play-by-play right in front of me. There was one interception that he threw where there was like maybe 40 yards they needed to drive for a touchdown, so short field position because of that. There was another turnover that Cooper Rush threw. All right, I got it in front of me. All right. Throws an interception on their second drive of the game, 44 yards. The Eagles had to drive for a touchdown. So they didn't even have to drive the full length of the field, right? So that's short field position. And with the Cowboys defense, you never know. Like maybe they hold into a field goal if it's a longer drive. Maybe they force a turnover. Maybe they still score, but it just takes longer. I don't know, but only 44 yards. The next possession, they gained 9 yards, but they went for it on fourth down in their own territory. Mike McCarthy, that was a stupid decision. I don't know why you did that. It was 14-0, and I guess you want to be aggressive, but you went for it in your own territory. The Eagles get the ball back. They gain 1 yard. They get a field goal. So now all of a sudden, it's 17-0, and 10 of those points have come off of Dallas Cowboys turnovers, giving them incredibly short field position. Then they throw another interception, and it becomes 20-0. The Eagles get another field goal after driving 30 yards. So basically, the Cowboys have turned the ball over 3 times, 2 interceptions, once on downs, and the Eagles have scored 13 points, and they only had to travel 75 yards to score those 13 points total. So basically what I'm saying is the Eagles did not actually impress me that much. Like, I thought their offense was good. They did what they needed to do to win. But if the Cowboys played conservative, if they didn't turn the ball over there, maybe the defense gets you a stop. Maybe the defense forces a turnover, something. Just delaying the Eagles' attempts to score could have changed the outcome of this game. And so I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, if Dak played, they won, because who cares? Like, that's a hypothetical and it didn't happen. Dak didn't play. Maybe if he does play, the Eagles step on the gas pedal more, But all I'm saying is the Eagles' offense didn't necessarily blow me away, especially in the second half. Like, the Eagles' drives, they come out 15 yards, punt, 6 yards, punt. They did get a 75-yard drive to score a touchdown, and that was actually a really impressive drive to me because that was outside of I think actually on the entire game. No, okay, their first touchdown, they drove 80 yards, but that was like them responding to the comeback that Dallas was all of a sudden putting on, and they went down the game and they iced it. So good on that drive. But outside of those 2 drives, like I said, I just wasn't really impressed with Philadelphia's offense. The Cowboys had more total offensive yards than the Eagles did in this game. And I don't know, like I'm saying, half of the points that the Eagles scored came off of short field position based on turnovers. And I think that Dallas, if they clean that up, and they also had like 10 penalties on the Cowboys, which I don't know if they'll clean that up because unfortunately that's been an issue for the Cowboys with Mike McCarthy. But if they clean those 2 things up and Dak was, to play in the next game, I really think that the Cowboys would have been the better team. So like I said, basically after that game, I'm just sitting there thinking, if this is the best the NFC has to offer, I'm not going to say what I think the Cowboys could do on the year because it's still the Cowboys and it's only week 6, but I felt way more confident coming out of this game than I did going into it because I wasn't super convinced by Philly in the way that they won. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm not going to go on. You already said everything, but I would agree basically for the most part. Philly, for some reason, like that one drive you mentioned in the second half, they did score a touchdown. It's when they finally started leaning on the run game. I would actually like to see them lean more onto it. I just feel like sometimes, like some of those drives, they got a little too pass happy, and then and it didn't really, the drive stalled out. So, but yeah, I think grand scheme of things, you're all right.
Also,
and I do agree. I would feel confident.
I do want to add too, on their first touchdown drive, it was 4th and 4, and they were about to go for it. Well, maybe go for it. And then Dante Fowler jumps off sides, neutral zone infraction. And then they score the touchdown the next play. And so even then, on like their first touchdown drive of the game, that could have potentially been a field goal if Dante Fowler doesn't do that. And so like, that's where I'm just like, it felt like I knew that Philly was going to win because it was Cooper Rush, was a backup. I do think that Philly is still one of the best teams in the NFL, one of the best teams in the NFC. And once again, maybe if Dak was playing, the game plan changes. Maybe they're a lot more aggressive. Maybe they turn on the gas pedal. I don't know. But overall, I just felt like they didn't necessarily make a statement. And so I'm really interested to see what happens the next time these two teams play and both teams are healthy, because I think that's the game where it's like, okay, if Philly plays like this, I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to win. But maybe Philly was playing in a way they knew they needed to win because they're playing against a backup quarterback. So that's the game where I'm really interested to see what happens with the Eagles, because you never know. Maybe they're playing it close to the chest. They're hiding some stuff because it's early in the year and they don't want to come out swinging immediately when they know they can win relatively easily. So,
alrighty. Well, we will have to see, because they will play each other again, because they're division rivals. So we'll see how that stacks up. But that was the Sunday nighter. Now we go to the Monday night game, which unfortunately had the Broncos starring in it again. And the Chargers, though, they were at home and they took care of business 19-16 in overtime. Man, something about these Broncos, man. They just they're like the Giants, but not good. I don't know what the best phrase is. But, they're ugly. They muck up these games. It's an ugly, field goal affair, defensive affair. And unlike the Giants, though, they just don't pull through in the end. I'll go first here for this one, since John, has long got to say his little soliloquy regarding your Cowboys. I'm still concerned about Russell Wilson, and obviously he got a hamstring injury late in the game. But once again, another game where I know he had 4 carries for 23 yards, but I just don't see the same explosiveness. And even on that one big, I think, pass to Hamler, like you could see, like the arm isn't really there, because the Chargers had a little bit of a mix-up, and then also,
to be fair,
Hamler had a kind of
he did get he was about to get hit on that play. So I will say, to be fair, he didn't have the time to step into the throw when he made it.
Okay, that's a fair caveat. But regardless, I mean, especially we saw, I think there's that stat in the second half where he just got out of rhythm and then couldn't find his rhythm again. And at the NFL level, you have to be able to be surgical from the pocket, and you can't afford to just not, have to be out of sync throwing wise or decision wise, and for a whole half. And as we saw, it kind of cost them, because Chargers made some plays in the second half, tied the game up, and that was that. I know there's going to be some people criticizing Herbert because he threw 57 times, 37 completions for 238 yards and didn't throw a touchdown, but like we mentioned, I mean, no Keenan Allen. Pat Surtain was locking up Mike Williams. And after that, it was just, he had to kind of dissect this Denver defense, kind of like I mentioned with some of these other teams, just by death by 1,000 cuts. He had to keep it conservative and, make some short throws, because they don't really have anyone that scares people deep. And credit this Denver defense. They've been really good. Baron Browning's kind of been a revelation for them. He's like a diet Micah Parsons, where we saw, he can kind of drop back in coverage, but he's probably best, on the edge as an edge rusher, creating havoc in the run and pass game. But I will say too, the Melvin Gordon benching was surprising. I mean, Latavius Murray had a good game, but it's not like Melvin didn't really do anything. He didn't fumble, so I'm not sure what the issue is there. And then there's obviously all the stuff that he was liking tweets after the game that were mentioning people. In those tweets, they're like, Melvin Gordon should be traded, should ask for a trade, this and that. So we'll see what happens with Denver going forward. I know that'll lead to more criticism upon Nathaniel Hackett, and unfortunately, I don't know the full situation, so I can't sit here and defend Hackett in regards to that. But I mean, Murray still did solid, but it's Denver offense just still sputtering like a car, basically, like an old car, basically, where I just don't see rhythm and flow to them. But yeah, just an ugly defensive game is really I got to chalk it up to. And unfortunately, the muff punt, like I said, just unfortunate, really. Muffed the punt, and then boom, they're in field goal range. Game over. So, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this Monday showdown?
The Melvin Gordon thing I thought was weird. The weirdest part to me was that you would let him split time with Javonte Williams, but you don't let him split time with Latavius Murray and Mike Boone. That part that really threw me off. And that was honestly the only thing I was really questioning Hackett for on this game. I didn't really notice anything else that I was like, okay, Hackett, that's pretty bad. But that I was just like, okay, it doesn't make sense. And then in his post-game interview, he said that he and Melvin were going to have a conversation and that Melvin didn't do anything wrong. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if like maybe they're doing a Cam Akers type thing where they actually intend to trade him or something, like where the Rams are sitting Cam Akers out. I don't know what's going on there. Clearly, Melvin was not clued in on it because in his post game,
I think that was one. That was one of the tweets he liked. Was like the Rams should trade Cam Akers for Melvin Gordon, which I don't think will help either team really.
Yeah, but I don't know. That was just really weird because I felt like Melvin Gordon could have helped you in this game, and he thought so as well. Like, I know that he's been fumbling, but I still think he's a very talented running back, and I don't know, you brought him back for a reason. Like, I don't feel like after 5 games, like all of a sudden you're just going to give up on the guy. Otherwise, why did you re-sign him? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. I'm interested to see how bad this injury is for Russell Wilson, because in the second half, he had a total of 3 completions for 15 yards. And honestly, the physicality and all that kind of stuff, like the physical stuff for Russell doesn't really worry me. Like he was moving around well in the first half. I've never thought of Russell as like the biggest arm QB anyway. Like he's very accurate deep wise. He's just not, I don't know. But the thing that is worrying me is his vision. Like there's just a lot of times that like an easy play opens up over the middle and he's not taking it and he's getting there late. And once again, I think this is a fixable thing, but like the vision is the part that's concerning me, because he's moving through his progressions late. He's focusing in on like certain routes that are just not going to be there sometimes. I don't know what's going on in terms of what he's seeing, and I can't tell if that's him getting used to the system or if he's just actually gotten worse at it. I don't know. I mean, we'll see as the season goes on, I guess.
Just to add, my boy Sims mentioned this multiple times, but Chris Sims, he said that he was watching the rush a lot.
Yeah.
Which, will lead to being late on your progressions.
Also, a critique of Russell that I haven't really noticed, but I've seen a couple different people point out, is he's not setting protections very well before the snap. Like, I don't know if like he's not seeing what the like I said, I think it's just all vision. Like I can't tell if he's not able to read what the defense is doing as of right now, and I don't know if that's because of like the new system. I don't know if like I said, I don't know, because I'm not really like a quarterback. I've never played quarterback. So I don't know like what goes all into vision and if that's something you can necessarily get worse at, because it feels like that's just like a mental thing that you would kind of go through this checklist in your head of like, okay, what's going on here? You figure things out and you roll. So I'm not sure. Like I don't know what's going on there, but that's the really concerning part to me. So yeah, I don't know if he's washed, but it's tough.
I just want to say in regards to protection thing too. I think just from what I've watching Russell for this basically almost all my life, but for most of his career, I think early in his career he got away with that because he was Russell Magic. A free blitzer, we saw it a million times. He would just run, he would dodge him somehow, or juke him, or make him miss basically. And that's why I see like where he just doesn't have that get out of jail free card now at that athletically, where he can. Oh, he didn't set protection right, but it doesn't matter because Russell made a miss or found a lane or just to take off and go. So that's why. But yeah, I think that's probably why it's more of a prevalent issue, but also probably on top of the fact that it's a new offense.
See, but even then, like I don't know, like I feel like his movement really hasn't. I would have to go rewatch some like old Russell Wilson, because maybe I just haven't seen him in a while, because I didn't really pay attention that much to like the final years he was in Seattle. But like the way he was moving the pocket, at least in the first quarter, it's weird to judge, because that first quarter he looked like the old Russell Wilson. He was great, 10 for 10. He had that big play to Judy where he was like moving around. Khalil Mack almost hit him and he rolls out to the right. And so it's like, okay, it feels like Russell's like getting back to normal. And then all of a sudden after the first quarter, like everything goes back downhill. And so I just... It's such a weird, bizarre scenario, because I truly don't know how to judge this, because I think a lot of people want to instantly say he's washed, but that's where I'm struggling, is because like the vision thing feels like a mental deal, and that just doesn't feel like something you get worse at. Like if you're okay, your arm strength's getting worse, or your lack of mobility or whatever, but like just the mental like stuff, I don't know, that just feels so weird. And I'm hoping it's correctable, because I do like Russell Wilson, and I do own him on many fantasy teams, unfortunately. So yeah, that part's a little interesting. But I want to point out, and I've said this in the past too, that I think Russell is also kind of unfairly being the scapegoated for all their problems, because I watched this video from this other channel, shout out Thinking Football, a great channel that breaks down film. And he was pointing out the fact, like, okay, if your quarterback is struggling, like your offensive play caller, and this is not to throw Hackett under the bus either, because I think that he's also unfortunately unfairly being thrown under the bus, but like maybe he needs to like dumb things down a little bit so Russ can just kind of get in a rhythm. And then the receivers are still dropping passes. Like Jerry Jeudy has been struggling with drops. Cortland Sutton has not been reeling everything in. I think they benched Albert O at this point because he was not making the biggest of impact in terms of receiving. And so like all these like minute little errors, and also the run game hasn't been that great. All these minute things force Russell to be relied on more, but then he's struggling. So now the whole offense is doing bad. Like, right, like we're looking at other offenses like the Giants with Daniel Jones. He's not even throwing for 200 yards and they're winning games. And I think it goes to show that like other people are filling in, whether, I mean, obviously they don't have Saquon Barkley, so it's tough. Like Javonte gets hurt, you can't control that. But there's like other ways that they're finding ways to make the offense work. And the Broncos just simply aren't doing any of that. Like everything seems to be like a struggle all around.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I'm sure all of Bronco Nation's hoping that you're right and these are fixable things and they get resolved, because they also just gave him an extension too, kind of like with the Kyler or the Cliff situation, except this one's a little tough because it counts on the cap, right? Because I don't think head coaches count on the cap, so you can fire him. That's on your own. That's on your owner's dime. So, we'll see if Denver can right the ship. But for the Chargers, they were able to. They needed that win after a couple of tough losses recently, not including the Cleveland one. But, before that, they hadn't been playing their best ball. Get 2 ugly wins. Hey, we'll take that. But, yeah. And you already mentioned, you did mention Surtain was your ball of the week. I forgot to mention Jamar Chase is my offensive ball of the week for the Bengals. Sorry, Jamar.
I didn't actually mention that, I don't think. Patrick Surtain, shout out to him. I know they lost the game. I almost picked Baron Browning, too, because people need to talk about Baron Browning more. His get-off speed is like TJ Watt level, and it's kind of scary how fast he is off the line. He's also kind of predicting it, which feels like a little bit of like Troy Polamalu there. Not saying that he is those players, but just the speed at which he's accelerating off the line of scrimmage on the snap is really crazy fast. Like he literally got a sack just by running past the guy because of how fast he went off the line. But shout out to Patrick Surtain. I know they lost. He completely shut down Mike Williams. I still won my fantasy game, and that's okay because I had Mike Williams. But he completely shut him down, only allowed 1 catch on the entire game, and it's just unfortunate their offense couldn't do anything because he absolutely balled out.
Yeah, he's approaching. He's knocking on him mainly. But he's knocking on that top 5.
I mean, in terms of the grand scheme, I wouldn't put him and Sauce Gardner in there right now, but like in this very moment, they are playing like I didn't mean to say
Sauce.
Corners.
Sauce is like knocking on top 10. Like, right. But Surtain's more for top 5. But I would say like I would definitely put Surtain
in this moment, they are playing like top 5 corners. I'm not going to say they are top 5 corners, but they're performing like one.
Yeah, and they're being put in situations that that those type of guys would be put in, and they're doing just fine. So, all right. So those are our ballers of the week. Sorry for my late edition of Jamar Chase, Cincinnati, but there's that. And those are the picks. If you wanted to know what we did spread wise, I went 8-6. John went 7-7. Those last 2 games really killed my momentum. I think I had a pretty good lead on you, but if Brett Maher makes that darn kick or Noah Brown reels in that catch, I probably cover that one. And then LA, I can't complain at LA for not covering, but yeah, so those are our reactions to week 6. As per usual, you can catch us on YouTube. Shut Up and Ball is our page there. Like mentioned, John is our editor, and we are on the road to 1,000 subs. John's been doing amazing work there. Our Instagram is at Shut Up and Ball Pod, and then our Twitter and TikTok are at Shut Up and Ball, and we are on all podcast streaming platforms if you just want to hear the audio. But other than that, we will see you later in the week with our week 7 picks against the spreads as I try to increase my lead against John ever so slightly. And we get to pick all the fun games for week 7. Other than that, everyone, hope you enjoyed your weekend, and we will see you next time. Adios.